Bismillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning. I am Dr. Mohammed Ahmed, resident urology. Today I am presenting treatment of urinary tract infection. But before discussing treatment, we will short review of urinary tract infection. So on this outline, we will cover this topic in next 1 hour. That is definition and classification, epidemiology, pathogenesis, diagnosis, and treatment. So, by definition, urinary tract infection is symptomatic urothelial inflammation secondary to bacterial adherence and internalization within the urinary tract. The common symptom is frequency, urgency, dysuria, suprapubic pain in case of lower urinary tract, and fever and flank pain, most commonly with upper urinary tract infection. So the patient who need to meet the criteria of definition should have positive urine culture. So the classical cutoff value is 10 to the 5 colony forming unit, but the 10 to the 2 colony forming unit is with symptomatic patient is also acceptable. In contrast, asymptomatic bacteriuria is two consecutive midstream urine specimen with isolation of the same bacterial strain in quantitative count, that is 10 to the 5 colony forming unit per ml. As the name indicates, the absence of the symptom. So pyuria is the presence of white blood cells in the urine, is generally indicative of infection or inflammatory response of the urothelium to the bacterium, stones, or other indwelling foreign bodies. Bacteriuria without pyuria is generally indicative of bacterial colonization without infection of the urinary thing. So pyuria without bacteriuria wants evolution of tuberculosis, stones, or cancer. So we classify urinary tract infection on anatomical basis in lower urinary tract infection and upper urinary tract infection. That is pyelonephritis, and in lower cases that is cystitis. And on the basis of degree of complexity, that's uncomplicated and complicated. Uncomplicated describes an infection in a healthy patient with a structurally and functionally normal urinary tract. And other than this, all urinary tract infection is complicated urinary tract infection. That is the common risk factor for complicated urinary tract infection is male gender, children, diabetic patient, pregnancy, immunocompromised patient, renal insufficiency, neurological disease or injury. And urological causes is nosocomial UTI, foreign bodies, anatomical abnormalities, polycystic kidney, diverticuli, and urethral obstruction, renal artery stenosis, widening dysfunction, surgery of the urinary tract. So UTI may also be defined by their relationship to the other UTI. That is isolated UTI and recurrent UTI. Isolated UTI is an interval of at least 6 months between infection, and recurrent UTI is 2 culture proven infection within 6 months or 3 culture proven infection within 12 months. Recurrent UTI may be due to reinfection or persistence. Reinfection is infection by different bacteria, negative culture between infection or infection occur 2 weeks after successful treatment. And persistence UTI is recurrence of the infection within 2 weeks of the treatment by the same organism originating from a focus within the urinary tract. So coming to epidemiology of the UTI, as we know, it is the most common human bacterial infection. Millions of the patients visit physician clinic annually and thousands require hospitalization. Overall expenditure exceeds 3.5 billion per year in USA. This is data from 2010. So in this diagram we see that incidence is on the basis of age and sex. On the basis of sex, there show female patients have multiple uptakes in their life. In preschool age, maybe due to widening dysfunction, and in childbearing bearing age is due to increased frequency of intercourse, in later age may be due to urothelial change, and in male in only in late phase due to enlarged prostate. So coming to the bacteriology, as we see in this diagram, there is uncomplicated and complicated UTI in both. The most common pathogen is E. coli, but in complicated UTI, Klebsiella, Candida, and Enterococcus also increase percentage. Pathogenesis. As pathogenesis discussed in previous presentation in detail, so I will short review of the pathogenesis. Root of infection is ascending infection, hematogenous spread, lymphatogenous spread, and direct extension from the other organs. And host factor, which is genetic factor, behavioral factor, and other comorbids, and bacterial pathogenic factors. So coming to the diagnosis, proper history and physical examination is important to diagnose the urinary tract infection. In history, we should ask about comorbids, in a traveler history, in a contact history and in physical examination thoroughly into urinary tract, urinary examination and abdominal examination is important. And in laboratory testing, in urinalysis and microscopic examination. In urinalysis, esterase and nitrates can be detected by a urine dipstick and are more reliable when the bacterial count is more than 1 lakh colony-forming units. And microscopic examination of the urine for WBC and bacteria is performed after centrifugation when bacterial count are more than 1 lakh colony-forming unit or more than 3 WBC per high power field suggests a possible infection. So esterase and leukocyte esterase and nitrates are sensitive and specific. As we see here, esterase is specific, is sensitive 79%, and nitrate is sensitive 49%, and specificity is 98% of nitrate. So, as you know, urine CS culture and sensitivity is the gold standard. But in asymptomatic patient, we will not send urine culture and sensitivity without in atypical patient with atypical symptom, negative urinalysis, recent antibiotic use, and complicated UTI.
How do you collect the sample of urine from catheterized patient? Can anybody answer this question from junior colleagues? Umair Senior.
Sir, as patient is already catheterized, so change the catheter and then collect the sample again.
You will take the sample from the bag, or you will take the sample from bag?
No, not from
so,
bag. So, remove that catheter, collect the sample, and then replace the catheter.
Sir, we'll change the catheter and we'll attach a syringe over in place of collecting bag and wait for the urine to come out.
Okay. You will clean the catheter end of the catheter where the bag is attached, and that part of the catheter is cleaned with swab, and then you will attach the syringe and then you take the sample from that. And from children's less than 1 year, how will you take the sample from for urine CS?
So that's a collection bag that's attached on perineum after slicing the perineum.
Okay.
So coming to the diagnosis, in additional investigation, which is generally unnecessary during initial diagnostic testing, that is upper tract imaging, cystoscopy, aerodynamics, but indicated in complicated UTI, urinary retention, persistent fuel, and obviously hematuria, bacterial persistence, suspected urolithiasis. So coming to the treatment, we will discuss a treatment under this lines: antibiotic commonly used in urology, source control, and management of the sepsis. Treatment with antimicrobial agent has minimized the morbidity and mortality associated with UTI. The goal in treatment is to eradicate the infection by selection appropriate antibiotic that would target specific bacterial susceptibility. It is therefore fundamental to have a specific working knowledge of the various antibiotic choice available and understanding of their mode of action and possible adverse effect. So, antibiotic commonly used in immunology, we should know mechanism of action, spectrum of activity, side effect, contraindication, and antimicrobial in pregnancy. But this is the side effect which is applicable to all antibiotics, that is allergic reaction, hypersensitivity, rash, yeast infection, GI upset, pseudomembranous colitis. So coming to the antibiotic sulfonamide. Sulfonamide acts by inhibiting the uptake of the para-aminobenzoic acid and thus inhibit the synthesis of tetrahydrofolic acid necessary for subsequent DNA synthesis. Mammalian cells do not produce folic acid and consequently are not affected. Because of its biostatic effectiveness on most routine coliform bacteria, it is the drug of choice for first-time UTI. Side effect includes allergic reaction, rash, fever, renal and liver damage, blood crisis. And dosage is 250 mg orally, 6 hourly. So trimetropium. Trimetropium also inhibits synthesis of tetrahydrofolic acid by competitive inhibition of enzyme dihydrofolate reductase. It is the bacteriostatic for many common urinary pathogens such as E. coli, Proteus, Klebsiella, and Enterobacter. Side effects include rash, fever, hematologic and gastrointestinal abnormalities, and the dosage is 100 mg orally twice daily. This is the combination of trimetropium and sulfametazole. Is commonly used to treat many UTI except those caused by Enterococcus and Pseudomonas. Trimetropium sulfametazole is a fixed dose combination of 80 mg and 400 mg and also available in double strength, that is 160 mg and 800 mg. Side effects include hypersensitivity reactions, fever, GI symptom, hemolytic anemia in patients with glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, and photosensitivity. Contraindication of trimetropium sulfametazole is folic acid deficiency state, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, and acquired aminodeficiency syndrome or in pregnant patients in third trimester. And the dosage is 160 to 800 mg twice daily. So beta-lactamase. Penicillin, cephalosporin, azithromycin are the beta-lactam antibiotics which contain beta-lactam ring in their molecular structure. They inhibit bacterial cell wall synthesis by irreversible binding of beta-lactam to the enzyme transpeptidase. Bacterial resistance developed by bacteria beta-lactamase production, an enzyme which break the beta-lactam ring. Ampicillin and amoxicillin often good activity against Enterococcus, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, and Proteus. However, gram-negative bacteria can quickly develop resistance. The addition of beta-lactamase inhibitors such as clavulanic acid render the aminopenicillin more active against the gram-negative bacteria. Methicillin, nifacillin, and coimoxiclav are resistant to beta-lactamase. And first generation cephalosporin have good activity against gram-positive bacteria, E. coli, Proteus, and Klebsiella. And second generation have good activity against anaerobes and Haemophilus influenza. And third generation have broader coverage against gram-negative with less gram-positive effectiveness. Side effect of penicillin is allergic reaction, rash, diarrhea, and anaphylaxis. And side effect of cephalosporin is allergic reaction, fever, anaphylaxis, and synergistic toxicity with aminoglycoside, everyone. Aminoglycoside. Aminoglycoside are a group of bactericidal antibiotics which inhibit bacterial protein synthesis. that is inhibit bacterial DNA and RNA synthesis. They are active against most gram-negative urinary tract pathologies, including E. coli, Enterobacter, Klebsiella, Proteus, and Pseudomonas. The drug is excreted in the urine by glomerular filtration. Gentamicin or tobramycin is good first choice for most serious gram-negative infection. Amikacin is effective for gentamicin or tobramycin-resistant organism. Side effects of aminoglycoside include ototoxicity, nephrotoxicity, and neuromuscular blockage. Nephrotoxicity is potentiated by hypovolemia, cephalosporin phosphomide. Serum level should be monitored and adjusted for renal insufficiency. Peak level, the toxicity level should be in the range of 4 to 6 microgram per ml. And throw level that is taken just prior to the next dose should be less than 2 microgram per ml. Dosage of gentamicin is 7 milligram per kg or tobramycin is 5 to 7 milligram per kg. So coming to the tetracycline. Tetracycline is the bacteriostatic antibiotic which interferes with the bacterial protein synthesis by inhibiting ribosomal function. It is a wide spectrum activity, but is good for sexually transmitted diseases. Excretion in the urine is mainly by glomerular filtration. Side effects include photosensitivity, hepatic toxicity, and staining of the teeth in children. So cannot use in pregnancy or in children. GI absorption is decreased if taken with food. Clindamycin. Clindamycin inhibits bacterial protein synthesis and is effective against most gram-positive organisms and anaerobic infection, including bacteroids. Side effects include GI disturbance, mostly diarrhea, and pseudomembranous enterocolitis secondary to Clostridium difficile. Dosage is 600 to 900 mg IV 6 hourly, but adjust dose for hepatic dysfunction. So vancomycin, mechanism of vancomycin is it inhibits cell wall synthesis by binding to the DLI terminal of the growing peptides chains during cell wall synthesis, which inhibition of the transpeptides which prevent further elongation of the cross-linking of peptoglycine matrix like beta-lactamase. It is active against all gram-positive bacteria, including MRSA. Side effects include Redman syndrome, that is flushing, fever, chills, rash, hypotension, and it also causes ototoxicity or nephrotoxicity when given with aminoglycoside. Local injection site reaction. And dosage is 500 mg 6 hourly IV. And adjust dose for renal insufficiency. So fluoroquinolones, that is ciprofloxacin or norfloxacin. Mechanism inhibit DNA gyrase. Inhibit bacterial DNA synthesis by and in this way preventing bacterial replication. It has a broad spectrum of coverage, including most gram-negative and gram-positive organisms, particularly Pseudomonas and Streptococcus. Avoid in pregnancy or under 16 years of age due to cartilage binding. Side effects include dizziness, seizure, confusion, insomnia, photosensitivity, tendon rupture, if given with to patient on steroid and CRI predisposed patient. Hepatic and renal clearance, mild renal dosing adjustment required. Phosphomycin, an oral bactericidal antibiotic that interferes with the cell wall synthesis in both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria by inhibiting the inhibition and involving phosphonyl pyruvate synthesis. It is highly active against gram-positive pathogens such as Staphylococcus aureus and Enterococcus, and against gram-negative bacteria such as Pseudomonas and Klebsiella. Its major benefit is its limited cross resistance between most other common antibacterial agents, as well as its efficacy against the majority of the gram-negative organism and vancomycin resistance Enterococcus. Fosfomycin is mainly used in the treatment of UTI, particularly caused by E. coli. Most enterobacterial and not Plasmodium effective as a single dose against when used as in empirical treatment for uncomplicated cystitis. Side effects include GI upset, vaginitis, and it is contraindicated in hypersensitivity. Nitrofurantoin is a synthetic bacteriostatic agent that inhibits bacterial enzyme and DNA synthesis. It is only effective in the urine where therapeutic level are achieved. It should be given it should monitor in the patient with renal impairment as the drug may not reach adequate concentration, and thus it is not recommended in patient with creatinine clearance below 50 ml. Use the treating tissue infections. Don't use to use in treating tissue infections such as pyelonephritis or prostatitis due to poor tissue penetration. Many urinary pathogens are sensitive, however, Proteus and Pseudomonas are usually resistant. Side effects include pulmonary infiltration with chronic use, hemolytic anemia in glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency patient, peripheral neuropathy, and hepatitis. The dosage of nitrofurantoin is 100 mg 6 hourly orally. So now we will discuss empirical treatment of urinary tract infection. This is the general guideline for empirical treatment. We should consider age, gender, pregnancy, or nursing home status, anatomical site of infection, that is whether it is upper urinary tract infection or lower urinary tract infection, community acquired versus hospital acquired infection, immunocompetent or immunocompromised, susceptibility pattern of potential pathogen in the community, recent hospitalization, chronic disease, recent antibiotic treatment, traveler history, colonization with resistant bacteria, remove foreign material, debride narcotic tissue, drain abscess, and relieve obstruction. History of contact with potential resistant bacteria. The dosing interval, maintenance dose, and pharmacodynamics of the antibiotics excretion problem like kidney function etc. should be considered. Adjust antibiotic dosage as necessary for renal or hepatic dysfunction. Monitor therapy by temperature curve, white cell count, sign of inflammation, and follow-up culture. Only use antibiotic when necessary. Avoid use of newer agent when available agents are effective. Use intravenous administration for any serious infection, at least initially. We should prescribe short course, that is 3 to 5 days therapy for uncomplicated cases. Long duration required for 10 to 14 days for complicated infection, that is pyelonephritis. Revise antibiotic choice to reflect culture and sensitivity results. So antibiotic choice in pregnancy, release screening for asymptomatic bacteriuria, and treatment indicated for to detect pyelonephritis. These are the safe drugs in pregnancy: penicillin, cephalosporin, clindamycin, aminoglycoside. But avoid these drugs given in first and second trimester, but avoid in third trimester. The sulfur drug causes neonatal jaundice, nitrofurantoin, both cause hemolytic anemia, especially in glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. And these are unsafe drugs which should be avoided. That is fluoroquinolone, which causes cartilage binding. Chloramphenicol causes gray baby syndrome. Trimethoprim interfere with the folate metabolism. Tetracycline bind bone and teeth. Erythromycin causes jaundice. So treatment of asymptomatic bacteriuria in every patient.
So why it is important to treat the asymptomatic bacteriuria in pregnancy? Who will answer this question? Junior colleague. Bhasga.
Pregnancy is immunocompromised.
आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Because
because pregnancy is immunocompromised state, and in immunocompromised patient, it can lead to serious infection and
समझ मुझे तो आवाज ही नहीं आई. Yes, you are right that pregnancy is an immunocompromised state, but why we have to treat the asymptomatic bacteria? What is the logic behind this? मैडम कुछ बता रही हैं.
In many studies, it has been reported that 25% of the patient will develop acute pyelonephritis. And when the patient will develop acute pyelonephritis, anemia will worsen, their chances of premature delivery, further complications if it is not treated at the same time. Plus, it is very difficult to choose antibiotics in pregnancy if the patients are not responding to penicillin and cephalosporins. Today, the first time I have read that clindamycins and nitrofurantoin can be given in pregnancy. In our times, I read only penicillin and and cephalosporins.
Now another question.
Nitrofurantoin is contraindicated in third trimester only.
पढ़ा था मैंने. बाकी सब जो है वो relative उनकी indications है. When you have to save the patient,
commonly penicillins are used. Augmentin.
Commonly penicillins are used.
So now another question arises that does pyelonephritis in pregnancy leads to fetal loss?
Yes.
No, pyelonephritis itself not lead to fetal nephritis, but because of its complication, you can have a number of changes, like you can have premature labor, you can have placental abruption, you can have IUGR if it is developed early. These complications will occur.
Pyelonephritis is usually caused by GNR, gram-negative rods, and they releases the endotoxin. With this endotoxin, if the situation is complicated and pyelonephritis is there in pregnancy, then endotoxin can cause the uterine contraction and preterm labor and fetal loss. So it is very important. Then we have to treat the asymptomatic bacteria urea in pregnancy, and it will not lead to pyelonephritis.
So, asymptomatic treatment of asymptomatic bacteria only in this population, that is pregnant women, patient with neurological or structural abnormality of the urinary tract, and patient undergoing urological surgeries. So, a patient is pregnant and with asymptomatic bacteria, treat with 3 days course or single dose with fosfomycin, and then follow up with after 7 to 14 days with repeat urine culture. If microorganism is eradicated, then advise follow up and repeat culture on each visit. And if on follow-up there is a significant growth of microorganism, then identify pathogen, whether it is relapse or failure of the treatment or new pathogen, that is reinfection, and then treat with 3 days course of antibiotic and do ultrasound, kidney, ureter, and bladder. So these EU guidelines recommended for uncomplicated status in non-pregnant women. Prescribe fosfomycin and nitrofurantoin as a first-line treatment for uncomplicated cystitis in women. Do not use aminopenicillin or fluoroquinolones to treat uncomplicated cystitis. These are the regimen, that is fosfomycin 3 grams in single dose, and nitrofurantoin, that is 50 to 100 milligram, commonly prescribed twice daily. And alternative is cephalosporin, that is 500 mg twice daily. And treatment for men is with trimethoprim sulfometazole, that is in 160 trimethoprim and 800 mg sulfometazole combination. And that is prescribed BD for 7 days. So treatment of uncomplicated cystitis in non-pregnant women. Bacterial cystitis in non-pregnant women, treat with 3 days course or single dose. Follow up after 7 to 14 days culture urine. If microorganism is eradicated, then no further investigation is required. If there is a significant growth in culture on follow-up, then identify pathogen, whether it is relapse or failure or new pathogen. That's reinfection. If this is reinfection, then no need for investigation and repeat the treatment. If this is the same pathogen or failure of the treatment, then do ultrasound of urinary tract, kidney, ureter, and bladder. So, risk factor for recurrent uncomplicated UTI include for young and premenopausal women and postmenopausal and rape patient. In young and premenopausal women, there is sexual intercourse, use of spermicide, a new sexual partner, a mother with a history of UTI during childhood, and blood group antigen secretory status. And risk factor for postmenopausal and rape patient, history of UTI before menopause, urinary incontinence, atrophic vaginitis due to estrogen deficiency, cystocele, increased post-wide urine volume, blood group antigen secretory status, urine catheterization, and functional status, deterioration in the elderly, and sterilization women. So management of recurrent UTI include preventive strategies.
What is the top-down approach in recurrent UTI or patient with the recurrent UTI? What is the top-down approach we usually use in PEDS? कौन बताएगा? Arsalan?
Recurrent
Top-down approach.
we have to send it the urine DR and CS if patient present with recurrent UTI, and then we have to, after the sensitivity of the culture report, we start the antibiotic treatment.
This is not top-down approach. Furqani?
In recurrent UTIs, we usually look for the kidneys. Is there any development of scarring? We'll do the DMS scan to look the scarring, and then we do the MCUG if there is any reflux.
If the patient comes with the recurrent UTI and we have done the ultrasound and there is no hydronephrosis and no post-void residue, then we can avoid the VCUG first, and we should do DMSA scan. If on DMSA scan scarring is there, then we have to do the VCUG. If scarring is not there, then we'll treat the patient routinely, and then we'll start the prophylactic antibiotic. So DMSA first, and then VCUG. This is the top-down approach.
So in management of recurrent urinary tract infection is behavior modification, advised behavior modification to the patient, that is post-coital widening and increase fluid intake. Use vaginal estrogen replacement in postmenopausal women. So when non-antimicrobial intervention have failed, then continuous or post-coital antimicrobial prophylaxis advised to prevent recurrent UTI. Consult patient regarding possible side effect of antibiotic prophylaxis. For patient with good compliance, self-administered short-term antimicrobial therapy should be considered. So uncomplicated pyelonephritis. Uncomplicated pyelonephritis is defined as pyelonephritis limited to non-pregnant premenopausal women with no non-relevant urological abnormalities or comorbids. Recommendation include treat patient with uncomplicated pyelonephritis not requiring hospitalization with short course of fluoroquinolone as a first-line treatment. Treat patient with uncomplicated pyelonephritis requiring hospitalization with an intravenous antimicrobial regimen initially. Switch patient initially treat with prenatal therapy who improve clinically and can tolerate oral fluids to oral antimicrobial therapy. Do not use nitrofurantoin, oral fosfomycin, and pemoxicillin to treat uncomplicated pyelonephritis. This is the regimen for oral uncomplicated pyelonephritis, the ciprofloxacin, levofloxacin, trimethoprim, and cefobitin. And this is IV regimen for uncomplicated pyelonephritis. So complicated urinary tract infection. A complicated urinary tract infection are believed to result in an infection that will more difficult to eradicate than an uncomplicated infection. Complicated UTI treatment recommendation include use the combination of amoxicillin plus an aminoglycoside, a second generation cephalosporin plus an aminoglycoside, and a third generation cephalosporin intravenously as empirical treatment of complicated UTI with systemic symptoms. Only use ciprofloxacin provided that the local resistance percentage are less than 10%. When the entire treatment is given orally, patient do not require hospitalization. Patient has anaphylaxis for beta-lactam antimicrobials. Do not use ciprofloxacin and other fluoroquinolones for the empirical treatment of complicated UTI in patient from urological department or when patient have used fluoroquinolone in the last 6 months. Manage any urological abnormalities or underlying complicating factors. So, catheter-associated UTI refer to UTI occurring in person whose urinary tract is currently catheterized or has been catheterized within the past 48 hours. Do not use pyuria as a sole indicator for catheter-associated UTI. Do not use the presence or absence of cloudy urine alone to differentiate catheter-associated asymptomatic bacteriuria from catheter-associated UTI. Management and prevention of catheter-associated UTI. Treat symptomatic catheter-associated UTI according to the recommendation for complicated UTI. Take a urine culture prior to initiating antimicrobial therapy in catheterized patient in whom the catheter has been removed. Do not treat catheter-associated asymptomatic bacteriuria in general. Treat catheter-associated asymptomatic bacteriuria prior to traumatic urinary tract intervention. That is transurethral section of the prostate. Relapse or remove the indwelling catheter before starting antimicrobial therapy. Do not apply typical antiseptic or antimicrobials to the catheter, urethra, or meatus. Do not use prophylactic antimicrobials to prevent catheter-associated UTI. Do not routinely use antibiotic prophylaxis to prevent clinical UTI after urethral catheter removal. The duration of the catheterization should be minimal. Use hydrophilic coated catheter to reduce catheter-associated UTI. Do not routinely use antibiotic prophylaxis to prevent clinical UTI after urethral catheter removal or in a patient performing intermittent self-catheterization.
सर ये एक पेशेंट जो हमारे पास आते हैं TURP के, उनके कल्चर यूजुअली पॉजिटिव होते हैं, तो हम यूजुअली जो है एंटीबायोटिक स्टार्ट करते हैं और 48 आवर्स के बाद TURP कर देते हैं. तो हमने देखा है कि उसको सेप्सिस नहीं होती. तो इज इट अ करेक्ट अप्रोच और
It depends upon the situation. For instance, if this is recurrent UTI, then it is different. But if it is related to catheter-associated UTI, then your point can be taken as such. So if it is like with catheter, then you can use 48 hours regime. Otherwise, I think you should treat recurrent UTI with the same regime as that has been written before.
I think if the patient has got catheter and his TURP is planned and his culture is positive, then we should give, of course, the antibiotic. But I think suprapubic cystostomy and removal of catheter before TURP will be an added factor for safety in these patients, because these patients can have prostatitis and that can flare up during the TURP.
Thank you. So, definition of urosepsis. Urosepsis is a life-threatening organ dysfunction caused by dysregulated host response to infection originating from the urinary tract and male genital organ. Criteria for urosepsis is clinical application. For clinical application is organ dysfunction can be presented by an increase in the SOFA score of 2 points or more. For rapid identification, a quick SOFA score was developed, that is a respiratory rate of 22 per minute or greater, and altered mentation or systolic blood pressure of 100 mm of mercury or less. This is a quick SOFA score. So, recommendation for the diagnosis and treatment of urosepsis: perform the quick SOFA score to identify patient with potential sepsis. Take a urine culture and 2 sets of blood culture before starting empirical antibiotic treatment. Administer parenteral high dose broad spectrum antimicrobial within first hour after clinical assumption of sepsis. Adopt initial empiric antimicrobial therapy on the basis of culture result. Initiate source control, including removal of the foreign bodies, decompression of the obstruction, and drainage of abscess in the urinary tract. Provide immediate adequate life support measures. And this is the antimicrobial regimen. And coming to the septic shock. Septic shock is a condition characterized by abnormal circulatory function secondary to overwhelming infection. Gram-negative bacteria were predominant organism isolated to 80% of cases, and gram-positive bacteria in 5 to 24%. E. coli is the most common organism causing gram-negative bacteremia. The classic bedside finding include a warm patient, breast capillary refill, and bonding pulse refracting pyrexia, peripheral vasodilation, decreased systemic vascular resistance. Other diagnostic criteria include evidence of organ dysfunction such as hypotension, oliguria, or ALS, and in laboratory immunometry include leukocytosis or leukopenia, hyperbilirubinemia, hyperlipidemia, hyperglycemia, coagulation abnormalities, and elevated C-reactive protein and procalcitonin. So, pathophysiology and clinical manifestation of septic shock is thought to result from the release of vasoactive substance such as bradykinin, prostaglandin, histamine, and catecholamine. Septic shock have 2 phases. In phase 1, the initial hyperdynamic state or warm shock is characterized by increased cardiac output, decreased peripheral vascular resistance, low central venous pressure, and warm extremities. And in second phase, eventually cardiac decompensation will result in the hypodynamic state or cold shock, characterized by decreased cardiac output, increased peripheral vascular resistance, and cold extremities, fewer leukocytosis, and a profound metabolic acidosis are usual. So, diagnosis of the septic shock present initially as altered mental status, hyperventilation, and respiratory alkalosis. It can easily be confused with other conditions. The differential diagnoses include atelectasis, pulmonary embolism, pneumonia, acute hemorrhage, and myocardial infarction. Workup should begin with history, physical examination, urinalysis, CBC, liver function test, and electrolytes. Patient should be pan cultured, including blood culture, urine, sputum, and wound culture prior to starting antibiotic therapy. Arterial blood gases and serum lactate dehydrogenase level should be followed to monitor the patient progress. Imaging investigations such as ultrasound and CT scan should be performed every day. X-ray chest is mandatory, and plain film of the abdomen and IVU scan may help identify the source of infection. Management guideline. The most important aspect of management is to eliminate the source of infection. An abscess must be drained, obstructive uropathy must be removed, and narcotic tissue should be debrided if necessary. Broad spectrum antibiotic therapy should be immediately started either alone or in combination with aminoglycoside without waiting for culture result. If infection is hospital acquired, or if the patient has had multiple infection or is immunocompromised or severely ill, an aminoglycoside and anti-pseudomonas beta-lactamase or a third generation cephalosporin should be used. And a CVP line should be placed for access and monitoring the central venous pressure. Fluid resuscitation is best done by using corticosteroid and or colloids. That's proper. If additional blood pressure support is needed, vasoactive agent, there's phenylephrine, norepinephrine, vasopressin, and dopamine can be started. Maintenance of blood glucose level below 110 mg per deciliter with intensive insulin therapy. Intubation with mechanical ventilation and positive and expiratory pressure are important for patient developing respiratory failure and shock lung. Monitor patient progress with ABGs and serum lactate level. So this is all about septic shocks. Now presenting this article, that is treatment and prevention of recurrent UTI in children, which is published in pediatric and international in pediatric and international child health in 2017. As we see, there is given guidelines of different institutions that NICE recommend ultrasound in first time UTI age 2 to 44 months. That's the age if patient is with atypical UTI or less than 6 months, then recommend ultrasound, and there is no recommendation for VCOG unless more than 6 months of age with positive ultrasound or atypical UTI. And NICE also recommend DMSA if more than 6 months post atypical UTI, and antibiotic prophylaxis is not recommended. So according to this article, antibiotic therapy for febrile UTI in young children should at least for 10 to 14 days and be based on the urine culture result. The appropriate workup after a UTI in young children and infant include ultrasound, kidney, and bladder. Children with renal scarring after an acute urinary tract infection should be followed long-term for sign of hypertension and renal insufficiency. Thank you. So the take-home message is start smart, that is give right drug at the right time at the right dose for the right duration. In this way, we might be able to preserve the utility of antibiotic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.